All right, everyone, it's time to air a little bit of a grievance here, which this is mostly in the Twitter sphere at this point. It doesn't happen on YouTube, because if somebody's engaging with me on YouTube, they can see that I've got, hundreds of thousands of people watching the material, so this claim is, like, absent or less common. But on Twitter, a lot of times, I think people don't realize that the audience size is as large as it is. And so when I try to make a political point, on like Elon Omar said stupid shit, like she quoted some poem that she was trying to appropriate for her own situation of being criticized for being dumb by Trump. And like, oh, well, you can shoot at me, but I won't die. Some stupid bullshit, some emo shit like that. I replied to him, like, nobody's targeting you. Like, you're basically being called out for being wrong. Deal with it. It's criticism. It's politics. And then people were, trying to dogpile me. Far leftists, Elon Omar fans. Oh, Yas Queen Slay, she's so great and you don't matter and stuff like that. It's like, it was like one person there, apparently unbeknownst to them, they're unknown to them. I'm actually, making content that 100,000 people will watch. She's like, well, where's the eye roll emoji? And I posted Valley Girl by Moon Zappa, Frank Zappa's daughter. Very funny. By the way, look that up. It's hilarious. And I'm like, well, yeah, eye rolling is usually done by people, in the stereotypical sense, eye rolling is associated with people who have no comeback and are brainless. So yeah, I can understand why you'd want that emoji. And she's like, well, ha ha ha, I know better than you because I just got done on my radio show. And I looked in, it's like a bunch of nasheeds and shit. And it's based in some small town, like 3 towns outside of London. It probably has like, 1,000 listeners or something. It's a bunch of nasheeds and shit like that. She's like, well, and by the way, like, oh, it uses big words, so try to keep up. And I pointed out, hey, that's lovely. 250,000 people will watch me today, and I'm actually an editor by trade. So if you're trying to like pull rank, do the popularity pissing contest thing, it's not going to go well for you. And she didn't, by the way, respond after that. I wonder why. But other people were like, whoa, you're acting egotistical, Sticks, basically. I get this occasionally even from people who like the content, like, you don't understand. I don't consider popularity equivalent to being right. The fact that I have a large audience now doesn't mean I'm magically more right than I was 5 years ago when the audience was small. Nor does it make me any less right if somebody else has a larger audience, which a lot of people do. And sometimes I disagree, like Tim Pool, I think overall his audience is bigger than mine. Does he have more subscribers than me now? I haven't checked in a while. I don't know if he does, but like overall, he has more exposure in public than me. But I can still disagree with him. We can have a debate. It doesn't magically make him right. Nor does it magically make me right if I spar with some person that has 10 subscribers. But if somebody else only understands the world in terms of popularity pissing contest, how the hell else am I supposed to get through to them? if they don't give a fuck about reality and all they care about is some random numerics that represent supposedly how many people take you seriously, what else am I supposed to tell to them, especially if they're unfamiliar with my work? If they really put that much stock in it, then I'm saving them the trouble of continuing to debate someone who by their own, a token of their own belief system is apparently always right compared to them. Maybe I can convert them to the far right that they believe that I'm part of. But it's funny because this is sort of like a microcosm of politics today. It's increasingly democratized. Scott Adams talked about this years ago, how he believed it would move in that direction. He's been right largely since then. Dilbert creator, cartoonist, and analyst, and mesmerist, and a few other things. But it's true. What's happened is, like, if you look at the 2016 election results, there are a lot of people who refuse to accept the result because they don't understand that there's an electoral college and that a popular vote on the national level doesn't determine the presidency. That initially the idea of the electoral college in part was representation of the states. By the way, this was originally what happened with the Senate too. The U.S. Senate initially was not voted for the way it is today. Initially, the senators were chosen by state legislative votes. That is, the state created the Senate. The various states actually voted on who they wanted to send to the Senate. The idea was to create a group of people who, by and large, they were like pillars of the community, more wealthy, more literate, more educated. The House of Representatives was supposed to be close to the people. That was the popular vote, Democratic side of it. The Senate was the Republic side of it almost in the bicameral fashion. It was a fusion system. It slowed things down, made them more literate and astute. It was an Enlightenment sort of system. There is something, by the way, to be said for the idea of going back to the initial way the Senate worked, preventing them from being voted for by popular vote. There is something to be said for that. Of course, that would make it wildly Republican, so it'll never happen. But here's the thing. Popularity doesn't matter. It's like the popular kids of YouTube, the people who have like the spit-shined edited videos and stuff and have the corporate contracts. By and large, they get ratioed, people realize they're wrong, but if you only look at, on the surface, the numerics of their fan base, because they're the priority creators that get forced down everyone's throats, like the Will Smiths and Katy Perrys of the world, yeah, they seem like more popular. Oh, and therefore more right. This is sort of a 10-year-old's mentality, too. You know, when you ask kids about politics and stuff, oftentimes they boil it down to very much, 51% should rule, and this is right because it was said to be right by someone who I trust, stuff like that. Appeals to authority, bandwagon approach and stuff like that. A lot of logical fallacies. Normally, when people get older, they get a bit more sophisticated, but a lot of people get locked into that 10-year-old's mentality about politics. And so they think, hey, I've got a podcast, and 10 people listen to me. So that makes my opinion worth more than this other person who doesn't have a podcast. Or this is sort of the blue check mark on Twitter effect as well. Well, this person has a blue check mark. I can trust their judgment. Of course, then there's the natural backlash among the actual cool kids who are sort of more with it, which is that if they got the blue check mark, they're probably a sellout. Most of the time they are. There are exceptions, like people who got it before Twitter decided to change it to being explicitly an endorsement of their views. It's funny because initially verification meant you are who you say you are and you're significant enough for that to matter, so that people can connect with you for business purposes mainly and know that it's not a fake, a fraud. Now it's basically Twitter is saying, okay, this person is who they say they are and we agree with their views. We endorse their views and we give them an algorithmic boost. But then there are people that are verified who have been verified for years, like a Paul Joseph Watson, I think, is verified. They obviously don't endorse his views. He just, for some reason, they haven't removed it from him yet. Probably because he would laugh about it and grandstand and say, hey, haha, now I'm even cooler because Twitter decided I was wrong think. Obviously. Man, it's so great. So yeah, I had fun with that. It's like, you don't know who I am. You don't know anything about me or my work. And so you're trying to lecture me on language usage, big words. That's not a great idea. I edit Old English for a living. And audience size, I guess, somehow makes you more right because you have a radio show. How many people listen to your radio show there in whatever it was, again, like outside of London? 1,000 people, 10,000 maybe? It's a bunch of nasheeds. I looked through the list. So you chant in religious speak, and occasionally weigh in on sociopolitics. Fucking gives a shit. You can do that on YouTube. If I want to listen to that sort of stuff, I'll listen to YouTube anyway. I don't need to tune into some UK broadcast. By the way, why are you even weighing in on Elon Omar if you're British? Like, suppose I get this from people on the left in Europe sometimes. Well, you shouldn't even talk about it. It doesn't affect you. It's not your country. Okay, then why do people do it, and weigh in on, like, Elon Omar being such a wonderful person? Half these people aren't even from the U.S. Her popularity appears to be much higher in Europe than it is among voting Americans. Even in her own district, it's like in the low 30s, I think, or the upper 20s. I can't remember. I always get AOC and Elon Omar's popularity mixed up. And by the way, it must suck to be Presley or Tlaib because then you're taking a backseat to these other two people who are very much more in the fore. And I've got my own thoughts about the reason for that. It could have to do with how photogenic these individuals are. Just saying, it could be that it's a rather lowbrow, sort of physically based thing for the legacy media. But then again, that's just me. That could just be my opinion. Maybe it's because I'm an evil male or something like that. No, I think it's called branding. I think it's called, yeah, you're giving camera time to people that will lull your audience because you're a neoliberal and you want these people to be popular. It's very funny how the legacy media is actually harming the Democratic Party by giving so much airtime to the Gang of Four. Meanwhile, I got these morons on Twitter saying, well, my opinion matters more because I have a radio show. So does mine matter more? I could eat your radio show up probably 10 times over. Does that mean that my opinion becomes more valid because more people listen to it? Dude, there are plenty of people plenty of people voted for Trump. You seem to think that that's a sign of idiocy. Well, half the population roughly did, so, why are you trusting the bandwagon thing? doesn't even fucking make any sense. The cognitive dissonance in some of these people's brains is quite advanced. It's quite sad, really, to see people that are so low functioning. That's about all. Peace out.